Nothing like working on a race car after a bad crash. We've had trouble getting the Civic onto the hoist for the wheel alignment. The first thing that happened was the power steering hose that was in the crash split, and I'd say that was damaged in the crash. So we lost the power steering, and then the clutch pedal went to the floor. So we've had to push the car on. Those things are easily repaired, but it's just more on the list of things to do to get the car back to racing condition. Want your car to handle? There's only one place to go, and that's Suspension Concepts at Wyong. They've got all the tricky bits to make your car stick to the road like glue. With the Civic's radiator removed, I can see exactly what the cause of my clutch problem was. I thought it was probably a pinched hydraulic line, but what's happened is on the previous bar in the crash, this point here has come back and hit the clutch slide cylinder and has broken that second mounting point and clean off. So when you add the hydraulics, instead of the piston going and activating the clutch, it just takes the easiest way out, and I'd say, yeah, the pistons pop right out. With the clutch slave cylinder removed from the car, you can see the pistons pop right out, and that's why I lost all the hydraulic fluid and the pedal went to the floor. You can also see where this piece has broken off. There. Now when you get into race cars and you buy a few spare parts cars and maybe even do the right thing, dismantle them and put them all in boxes, it can be a lot of source of irritation and wonder to your partner. They can't see the sense in it. I wrecked a Honda Civic about 20 years ago, and look what I found. The amazing thing is, not only did I have that part from a car I wrecked 20 years ago, the amazing thing is, after 2 house moves, I was still able to find it. It took me 3 minutes to find it in my shed full of parts. So what that tells me, with great pride, is my higgledy-piggledy, looks like a mess, you'd never find anything system of storing parts, in this instance anyway, works. So all I've got to do is put this one on and throw away the one with the broken mounting point. As I've mentioned before, the main force of my crash came straight in there, right where that oil cooler is, and went right back through the subframe rail. I was working just now removing the front lower wishbone to replace the bush where it pivots on the subframe. This is one of the 2 bushes that we found was worn when I went to Suspension Concepts. Both of them are original factory ones, and they've just reached their use-by date. So to take that arm out, I jacked the driver's side of the engine up a little bit to take a load off a bolt, and I noticed the engine just went straight up, and I thought, I don't think it should go up that far. So I undid the top of the engine mount to find that I think that engine mount had it. Sitting there, it looks all right with the weight of the engine on it. You can see the damage that's occurred with the cup where it's had it, the sideways hit, and I knew that engine had gone back and come back to close to the original position. I'm really glad to find this now, because my first event's planned for South Australia. 3 days there, 3 days back on the road. And the last thing I want to do is drive all that way and then find that there's something small wrong with the car. So although I'm still finding broken parts from the smash that I hadn't found up until now, I'm glad to do that. I've unfortunately run out of time to do the first event. I was going to make the most of the miles going to South Australia, and I set it up so that I'd do Collinggrove Hill Climb one weekend, and then the next weekend the main one which I want to do, which is called Devil's Backbone or Mount Alma, and it looks like I won't be able to get to Collinggrove now because I've ordered that part, but by the time it gets here, I think at the best it'll get here about 2 days before I'm due to leave, and probably because we're up in a country area, it's more likely to come after that. So the trip to South Australia will just be about one event rather than two. But like I say, I'm glad to find these broken parts now rather than when I start racing. Hopefully, that's the last of them. Oh, and by the way, I went through my parts bin, and sure enough, yet again, I did have one of these mounts. And when I pulled it on the top, it was broken like this one. What sort of an idiot keeps broken engine mounts? Let's not answer that. As I just said, I've got to replace these inner suspension arm bushers. If you were taking this to a garage, or if you had an extremely well-equipped workshop, you'd push that bush out with a hydraulic press. But if you're like me and you haven't got one, how do you get that bush out? Well, I'll show you the way I do it. It's crude, but it works. The first thing I always do is spray on some penetrating oil. If you've got a really stubborn bush that won't move with this method, spray it with penetrating oil and leave it overnight, and it might soak in these things for you. Then I've got two sockets. One is just the size of the bush. In other words, this will go all the way through the suspension arm, so it's a little bit smaller than the bush. And the other one is to rest it on. If you try resting this on a piece of wood or anything like that, and you bash on that, the wood absorbs the shock. You've got to get the shock for the bush to move. You've got to get all the shock going into the arm. So I've got a second socket, and it's on the inside is a little bit larger than the bush, which will allow the bush to drop into it. So I set it up so that it's sitting on the lower socket. I put the top one on the mount. You get the biggest hammer you got in your workshop, and you give it as big a hit as you'd like. Usually takes a few to get it going. A few more hits. There you go, bush removed. The good thing is the bushes that go in are two-piece. They just slide in. They're not made like this, they're made differently.